The second part of your question was like, how many followers do you need to have? What's the threshold of audience size or whatever before you can start working with advertisers? The answer I always give is 0.
So you think you need millions of followers to land those big brand deals? Well, think again. Justin Moore has helped creators secure over $5 million in sponsorships without needing a massive audience.
We personally have done over 550 deals, made over $5 million doing it. So it was one of our primary revenue streams as creators.
As the founder of Creator Wizard and the Brand Deal Wizard course, Justin is the go-to expert for creators who want to negotiate profitable brand partnerships. From managing millions of dollars in brand deals for his own creator brand to running an influencer agency, Justin knows exactly what brands want and how creators like you can deliver. Today, he's here to reveal how any creator, whether you've got 100 followers or a million, can start landing sponsorships and turn content creation into serious income. You'll discover Justin's proven step-by-step strategy for securing brand deals, the top resources and ways to connect with the right brands, and how you can start landing sponsorships even with a small audience.
If I told you that you could make $10,000 quicker from sponsorships than from YouTube AdSense, would you believe me?
Presented by Heights Platform, your all-in-one solution for course creation and community building. Hey, Justin, welcome back.
What's going on, Brian? Thrilled to be back, man.
So my first question for you is, why did you decide to become a sponsorship coach?
Wow. Honestly, I think a big part of the reason was because, my wife and I are creators. We've been doing this since 2009. It was our first YouTube channel, actually. And so we personally have done over 550 deals, made over $5 million doing it. So it was one of our primary revenue streams as creators, for a decade plus. And so we've very much kind of been in the trenches and made basically every mistake that you can imagine when it comes to collaborating with brands. But then I also ran an influencer marketing agency for about 7 years, where I was afforded a very different perspective at that time, where I was kind of in the boardrooms with these big brands and these big advertisers now, where they were saying, hey, we don't want to just pay you, April and Justin, $5K, $10K over here. We want to spend $1 million across 200 creators. Tell us what the strategy should be. What platform should we activate on? What types of partners should we work with? And they ultimately said, hey, hey, Justin, we're going to move forward with like these 4 people, but don't ever show us those other 7 people again. They're terrible for the following reasons. And so it was so fascinating to me of like the things that would cause a brand to like not want to work with the creator. These are things that a brand would never say to the creator's face, And so when I decided to start educating creators around, working with brands and making more money and things like that, I just felt like this was a very interesting perspective to share of ways in which you can improve your overall, essentially attractiveness to brands.
Yeah, that's really cool to be on kind of both sides of it. So in the past 5 years, how would you say the sponsorship landscape has changed, especially with now you've got the rise of like these micro or nano influencers?
Wow, it's changed massively, man. I come from the world of YouTube for sure, and it was like a pretty rude awakening. Things were pretty good throughout the pandemic, essentially for most creators. Like it was a lot of advertisers shifting their advertising spend or their marketing spend to creators, candidly. I mean, a big one in particular I remember was the Olympics. Like there was, billions of dollars that they had to reallocate because there was no Olympics that they held. They basically didn't hold them. And so you can look at huge advertisers like P&G or Unilever or something, who are these parent companies for hundreds of brands basically, and they're sitting here on all this money that they have to spend. They can't not advertise, right? And they also were like, what? Wait, hold on a second here. We can't do these like giant production shoots anymore because everyone's social distancing. Well, we would spend $250, $500 million on a shoot. Literally, they're spending this kind of crazy money. What are we going to do with all this money? Oh, wait, there's these massive amounts of people who have great professional equipment. They're good on camera. They've built up an organic distribution channel. And you know what those people are called? They're called creators. They're called influencers. And so there was this big reckoning, I think, where it was a boom town, basically, for lots of creators. And so the interesting thing, though, was that I think creators thought it was going to last forever. They thought that the deal flow, the emails from brands, I wake up, I got 3 opportunities in my inbox. Awesome. Right. And they thought that that's how it always was going to be. Especially if they didn't remember what it was like before. Right. And so I think that there was this kind of rude awakening that like, oh, wait, I guess I have to maybe do something to reach out to brands now. I can't just sit on my hands and wait for them to email me. And so I think that's probably one of the biggest changes that has happened over the last 5 years, is realizing that sponsorship still can be a lucrative revenue stream, but you can't do it passively. It has to be an active thing.
So I kind of want to walk through the steps for a viewer who is a creator and is interested in either getting sponsorships, getting better sponsorships, or even maybe wondering if they should kind of dive into this world or not. So why would you say sponsorships are a great way to make money online? And what would you say about the creator as far as how many followers they need to have?
Yeah. So let's start with the first question of like, why is it a good way to make money? If I told you that you could make $10,000 quicker from sponsorships than from YouTube AdSense, would you believe me? Because you absolutely can. It's way easier to make 10,000 sponsorships versus AdSense, which can sometimes take people years to reach that threshold. And I think this is held up as the holy grail for a lot of influencers, is like making money from the platforms that I'm posting them on, whether it's, long form platforms or whatever, like YouTube, or bonus programs and things like that platforms like, Instagram and TikTok have, creator funds, etc. Oftentimes it's pennies for the amount of, eyeballs that you're actually getting on that content. And so I think when I sit creators down and really tell them exactly how much you can make, if you're able to, negotiate a good amount for the work, that's a reason. That's absolutely a reason. It's way easier to make that money.
Well, to add to that, it's not like, it's easier to make that money if you like know the secrets or something. No, like in general, you make more with sponsorships than just from the platforms, because the platforms are advertisers paying the platform, and the platform just gives you a little bit.
Right.
But if you're just getting paid by the advertiser, then naturally it makes sense
100%.
to be more.
100%.
Just for that reason. There's other reasons as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of other reasons. And the second part of your question was like, how many followers do you need to have? What's the threshold of audience size or whatever before you can start working with advertisers? And the answer I always give is 0. And it's a kind of hyperbole a bit. But the reason I say, I have a video on my YouTube channel actually called that, like, how to get subscribers with zero followers. But let me share an example. So let's imagine that you are a very, very niche creator. Let's say that you review healthcare SaaS tools on your YouTube channel, something super specific, right? But there's lots of people who have built businesses like that. You've got 500 subscribers, right? But your views are getting, 500, 600 views. And if you were to reach out to a random brand like Audible or something, and say, hey, would love to, I use Audible, all the time on my commute. I love listening to, these niche books, et cetera. I'd love to do a partnership where I, talk about how awesome Audible is. They're going to take one look at your YouTube channel. Sorry. And they're going to be like, okay, they're going to do this. I have a sound effect for that. They're going to be like, no, I don't think so. I'm not going to respond to this person. I'm going to say thanks, but no thanks. I'm going to ghost them, etc. And then you get sad. You think it's the long, dark night of the soul. You're like, I suck. My brand, my creator, my channel sucks. No brands is ever going to want to work with me. And the reality is that, number one, you need to be realistic in the types of brands that you're going to target. If you instead decided to go after a specific SaaS tool that is very relevant in your industry, even if you only get 500, 600, 100 views on this review, that could be the head of IT at this healthcare system that is the decision maker for new pieces of tech in their budgetary planning cycle. And so being able to tell the story of the types of people that are in your audience is absolutely paramount when it comes to engaging with these sponsors. And so even if you are very small, your task becomes, I need to learn more about my audience and understand and discover what is my wedge. Because I'm small, I have to be able to tell that story when I'm potentially going to reach out to a sponsor and help them understand why it makes way more sense to sponsor me at 500 subscribers than it does this other person who has 10,000.
Yeah, that's a great point, because the advertiser side, like, they don't just want audience, they want the right audience. And that's really important to them. So
can I share a quick anecdote? I think this will be helpful. Like a real example, which is
that's what I was going to exactly what I was going to ask for next. Yeah.
So I could share two examples. One, I'll share an example for myself. I'm a sponsorship coach. How much more freaking niche can you get, Brian? Right? Like this is like a very weird niche thing that I do. And yet, I didn't do sponsorships when I started the business. I was like, courses, coaching, that's the business model, right? And yet I had all of these creator economy companies in my inbox saying, hey, is there something here? I feel like we could collaborate somehow. And I basically got on a call with them and I told the story. I said, look, the people who follow me on social media or the people who are on my newsletter, it is a very specific type of creator. It is someone who is trying to make money, not someone screwing around on TikTok, not someone just messing around on YouTube. They're trying to build a business. And that is a prized persona of customer for a business, because these are people who are proven to be investing in their business. Not only that, Brian, I had my course sponsored because these companies, these businesses who wanted to partner with me, these were people who were paying multiple thousands of dollars to join my course. And so they were like, we want to be in front of those 50 people. That's who we want to be in front of, right? And so again, this is not a scale play. It's the brand's understanding the value of the type of customers that they want to get in front of. And so this is just an example for me. Second example I can give is one of my coaching clients. Her name is Dr. Alex. Okay. And she has a business called Digital Pathology Place. So she's a veterinarian doctor, right? And so she is not getting tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of views on her YouTube or her LinkedIn or podcast or whatever. She's getting hundreds. And do you know who's in her audience though? It's the doctors, it's the lab techs, it's the people who work at these medical device companies. And she is absolutely crushing it with brand partnerships, because think about it from their perspective, Brian. I'm medical device company X, right? And I'm sitting here thinking, I have like $20 million of money to spend on marketing. And I'm sitting here thinking, how do I spend this money? I can advertise in the trade publications. I can buy a $500,000 booth at the trade shows. I can, send out mailers. There's all these like things, but it's really difficult for them to figure out places to market to this really specific customer that they're trying to reach. And so when they find people like Dr. Alex, they just roll out the red carpet, right? Because
especially if the task is for the person involved with handling that budget. How do I spend it on TikTok, or how do I spend it on Instagram?
Yeah, exactly. It's really hard because there's a finite supply of people speaking to those audiences.
As a creator, realizing that and realizing who is actually in your audience is really important. If followers are maybe not the only metric, or not as important a metric as people think that they are, what would you say creators should like pay attention to in order to kind of grow?
So a big part of it is realizing that it has nothing to do with you. When you reach out to a brand, they don't care about you. They care about a couple things. Number one, main thing that they care about is themselves. They care about their own initiatives, their own objectives. You run a company, Brian, right? And so you're sitting here in your marketing, all hands meeting or whatever every month, however often you do that. And you have growth KPIs, right? You have goals of how many new users you want to reach. You have new features on the product roadmap that you think could be a really compelling user acquisition channel, right? So you're sitting here thinking, hey, okay, I need to allocate money from my marketing budget for each of these KPIs, right? Depending on what they are, right? And so, I'm just making an inference here, but like I've done this a lot for a lot of brands. And so this is what they have money for. Brands have money for their own objectives. They don't have money for the random creator that reaches out to someone on your team, Brian, saying, hey, I'd love to collaborate with you. I've got 100,000 followers on TikTok and I talk about AI tools sometimes. It would be great. Let's figure it out. And you're sitting here thinking, okay, I don't know who this person is. Yeah, okay, that's great that they have 100,000, but there's lots of people who have 100,000 followers. In fact, we sponsored some people before and it was kind of a mixed bag of results. And so I don't know if this is really a good tactic. I don't know. Contrast that with the creator who reaches out to you, Brian. They heard you talk about on a podcast one time that you were coming out with this new feature that's a game changer in Q2. And they say that feature is amazing. In fact, I talk about this feature specifically on my podcast or on my YouTube channel. This is going to be a game changer for my audience. And here I link to it. Here's the podcast episode. You can listen to it. I would love to do this for you. I can do 5 podcast integrations. I'll give you the usage rights to the content for 6 months. I can turn around the first piece of content in 10 days. Here's how I've helped this other brand achieve results. Are you free on Thursday at 10 a.m. to talk about this? What would you say to the creator who sent you a message like that versus the first person?
Definitely. And yeah, and to the point even earlier about liking the creator, that's not part of it at all. There has been like creators where like we sponsored their newsletter or something like that. And I have a great connection with like those creators and like that's awesome, but like didn't really work out. So like, well, we're not going to sponsor it again. But like that, the brand's objectives are what they're after. And so seeing the message from somebody that's like, wow, they get exactly what we're trying to do and they understand, and this is going to get in front of our audience. They understand the product. They're going to show it to them the right way. And that's exactly what they're looking for.
And also, even if the inference that you make as a creator, that example I shared of like, oh, this AI feature or whatever, that may not be the thing that you're focusing on in Q2, right? It was a speculation that this creator made, but the initiative to do the research and to say, hey, I think this is what you care about, allows you then the opportunity to be like, hey, look, I love your initiative here. That actually was our focus last quarter or 2 quarters ago. But there's this other thing that there's no way you would have known about. We haven't talked about it yet. But what about that? Are you interested in that? Collaborating on that? I can only imagine like this is what it takes. So I think any creator watching or listening to this the takeaway is like, it's not about the pitch. That's to get in the door. That's the wedge to say, hey, I'm listening here. I care about your business outcomes. I'm not in this just for the money. You allow that as your foot in the door to then open a broader conversation.
Yeah, I think that can help build trust too, because it shows that you're at least invested enough that you're trying to understand what the business's objectives are in some way. And like there's actually like in November, there's this potential partnership we were going to do. And we decided like, all right, we're just not doing it because we felt that the creator just was not actually like really on board and understanding what we were trying to do. And so it just would have felt too risky, as opposed to if that creator came to us and said like, I completely get this product. I really want to show this to my audience because I know that this will really resonate with them. Like if we saw that, I think we would have completely felt different about it.
You know, the other thing that I talk about a lot is a lot of creators will come to me and say like, brand deals are great when you can get them, but it's everything I do feels like kind of like a one-off transaction. Like the brand works with me once and then there's no ongoing relationship. It's just like, it feels kind of cheap. And my first question that I always ask is like, okay, well, did you ask them how it went? Did you go back to them and say, hey, how'd it go? And the creator's like, no, I'm terrified of doing that because what if the brand says it went awfully and that they hate me now and never talk to us again? This is what, honestly, this is, I'm being a little facetious, but like, this is what most creators fear, is that they didn't drive the adequate number of sales or the number of views that the brand was hoping or whatever. And what I always say in this scenario is like, Nelson Mandela has this great quote. It's like, I never lose. I either win or learn. So if the brand says, oh, what awesome, let's work, like time for you to pitch the next deal, right? But if the brand, says, well, it went okay. We were hoping maybe it was going to be more sales or, more views or more trial signups or whatever. Now's your opportunity This is what I say is to submit something called your post-campaign report, where you're not just giving them screenshots from the YouTube insights or the TikTok analytics. You're giving them not just the quantitative stuff, but the qualitative insights, your own analysis of, why you think, like, things that went well, things that didn't go so well. When I tell creators, like, you got to circle feedback back to the brand that isn't just glowing. Oh yeah, it was great that we got some comments that were like, this is awesome. But you know what the brand would find equally valuable? These 5 comments that says, oh, I tried the Heights platform 6 months ago. It was okay, but I don't know. I churned because I don't know. I thought I could do it on my own or whatever. If the creator, and that's especially good feedback for you to have, Brian, if it's if the creator's getting that feedback privately, where people are replying to the email blast with this or DMing them, you're not seeing these comments on a public facing social media post, right? And so if the brand came back to you and says, here's like a common theme that I'm seeing in the replies that I got, that then allows you to be like, oh, well, I didn't know that was still the perception in the market. We actually overhauled that feature 2 months ago, and it's totally different now. Like then you said, let's go out, let's do another content post. Let's go out and do another partnership where we could talk about the fact that we could, that it's different now, right? And so imagine how valuable that is for a brand. And so I'm just sharing these examples, but like notice how we haven't talked at all about follower size at all. Like you're saying, how can we grow? How can we get more sponsorships? None of the things we talked about have anything to do with how many followers you have. It's more about you approaching this almost like a consultant and not just a creator.
Yeah, definitely. And what do you think about now? It seems like so many platforms are more algorithmic and kind of followers are almost ignored in some ways, that an account with nothing, if it makes the right content, can kind of explode with views.
Dude, Jack Conte, who's the CEO of Patreon, had this great talk he did about 6 months ago called The Death of a Follower. And that's exactly what the trend is shifting towards, is the kind of the for you curated algorithm where subscribers are and followers are deprioritized in the feed. It's about the behavior that, the user, the viewer has when they're engaging with the content. I saw this a lot when I ran the agency, that, you'd hold up someone with 10,000 subscribers or followers and someone with 50,000, and they would be getting the same amount of average views. So the metric that we use internally as an agency when we were vetting people was average viewership. It had nothing to do with their subscribership. And so we would go back and we do an average calculation based on their last, 15 uploads or something, if we were doing a YouTube sponsorship. So the savvy advertisers understand that, but a lot of brands still don't, dude. A lot of brands are still, they got to have 10,000 followers or 100,000, or we need a mega influencer, 1 million. It's just so stupid. But I think a lot of brands are wising up to it.
Yeah. I think more and more, especially where like brands are trying to do like these campaigns in short form content and things, where they realize that some or all of where they're allocating their budget is to maybe newer creators, especially I think in like the consumer space where you're selling like a consumer product or software. I think what's really interesting though is like, as far as the follower counts and algorithms driving views, I think it's only going to shift even more in that direction, because now that we've got AI putting out content, I actually personally feel like we're seeing these glimpses of getting to the point that an individual can create more content than they can possibly consume themselves.
Yep.
And so like what I mean by that for somebody who's maybe not familiar with the idea is like, even right now with like AI image tools like Midjourney, and there's music tools like Suno, you can really generate like a pretty insane amount of content relatively quickly. So Midjourney on their higher tier plans, you could do this, but now they've added this on their like they had a holiday thing. They let people even on the lower plans experience this as well, where you could make basically like a couple hundred images in like a couple seconds. So imagine a future where you as an individual creator can have some kind of ideas or something you want to share or talk about, and you can create maybe every day you could create 10,000 images, 10,000 songs, and 10,000 videos. Like you can't even watch the content that you've created to even be able to decide like this is guaranteed the perfect one to share, because you just couldn't even go through all of it. And so if there's that much content created in the future, then I think the way that social media works is going to have to change. It's going to have to be more about like, hey, Justin's interested in this concept or this idea right now. What's everybody else sharing or creating around this kind of thing so we can show that to him? And yeah, there will be people that you'll follow and that you'll resonate with and remember. But it's also going to be just, there's so much content. How can you see like the right takes on things that way?
You know, the phenomenon that you just described, I think we're getting closer and closer to something that was, I can't remember who coined this, but it was called the dead internet theory, where it was basically like in the future, like it's just going to be bots interacting with each other. I mean, you see this with a lot of the AI agent stuff that's being developed right now, that like there may be a future in the not so distant, not that far away, where it's like everyone has their own kind of personal AI agents that are out there doing things for them, whether work or play or whatever it is. And I have this theory that there is absolutely going to be a percentage of the population that has just an all-out rejection of all things AI, and there's going to be kind of a flight back to humanism or very obviously, like non-AI generated content. I don't know what percentage of the population that's going to be. And then I think there'll be some people who there'll be kind of a hybrid approach where it's like they prefer a mix of that. But this is a real thing. I think that I'm not a futurist, but I do think that this is like coming, because like you said, there's absolutely no way that a single individual can like consume all this content. There's always this thing where it's like, do you want to be a producer of content or do you want to be a consumer of content? And I think it's like a convergence that the average everyday person, it's just so easy for the average everyday person to become a creator now than it ever has been.
Yeah. Well, I think it's going to do a couple of things. I think that more people can create, but like the standard is just going to keep going up.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so like, if you think about like, even before AI, like let's go back a few years, what the average creator can like produce and create compared to like 10 years before that is like immensely better.
Yeah.
And like, we've got better lights, we've got better cameras and everything. And now with AI, it's just going to continue to make that better. So yeah, like the consumer before is going to be able to like create things, but the creator who's really a professional at their craft, they're just going to be able to create even better than before. Mm-hmm. And I kind of see a world where people talk about, well, we should like label the content that's created by AI. I think it's probably going to be the opposite, actually, because there's just going to be so much from AI. So they're going to label the content, say, hey, this is actually Justin Moore. You're watching Justin Moore. This is a real human here. And I agree with that, though. I think creators will have an advantage from being a real person, that people will want to actually connect with a real person and not just be consuming content that is AI generated or assisted in some way by AI to create it.
I could tell you a real life example of this labeling thing. So I came out with my book Sponsor Magnet on January 21st. And when I was going through the publication process, there's actually like an area in the submission process where you have to certify that whether you used any sort of AI to actually create the manuscript or create the book. And there was like consequences if you checked that box as it being 100% human, created or whatever. And it wasn't. So these are like real things like that are starting. So, you can imagine there's like some sort of badge, of honor where it's like, this was 100%, human created. It's probably true.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, let's get into now like pitching to brands.
Okay.
So I think we already helped identify a little bit of how creators can figure out the right brands to partner with. Mm-hmm. But what's your like recommended step-by-step process for pitching to a brand? Yeah.
So the example that I shared with you earlier about how to kind of position this outreach when you were to reach out to, someone like you, Brian, I actually have codified it into a methodology called the ROPE method. So ROPE. So your pitch basically has to be relevant to a campaign that the brand is either currently running or has run in the past. O stands for organic, meaning you can tie your pitch back to organic content the brand that you have already posted that illustrates that your audience has an affinity for their brand or their product, right? P stands for proof, so you can show how you've helped other brands achieve results. And E stands for easy to execute. When the brand says, yeah, this is kind of interesting. What did you have in mind, so to speak? And so the ROPE, that framework when you're actually crafting a pitch to a brand, I've done this across hundreds of pitches. My students have done it thousands of times. And like, you really don't need to stray, because again, it's going back to like, what's in it for them? You don't need to lead this email with 3 paragraphs about how many followers you have, your audience demographics. They don't care. They care about themselves, right? And so this is just like, you do not need to reinvent the wheel here. It's just about keeping it simple. So that's one half. But the other 50% that we haven't really talked about, Brian, is who do you send the pitch to? Because I think that this is something that also trips people up a lot. A lot of times people will DM the brand on social media, or they'll email press@brand.com or fill out some sort of contact form on the brand's website where sponsorship pitches go to die. So just don't do that. It's not worth your time. And the advice that I give in this scenario is educating yourself around the marketing hierarchy at the brand using tools like LinkedIn. Understanding, depending on the scale of the organization, like how many people work there. In fact, I have a graphic in my book Sponsor Magnet called the Job Title Targeting Matrix, which is essentially, okay, if there's 0 to 15 employees here, probably the director of marketing is the person to target, because it's the only person who works at marketing there, right? They're doing everything. They're doing the pennies. They're doing the penny saver. They're doing the bus bench. They're doing the Google pay-per-click ads, whatever. And yeah, if they're working with creators, that's probably the person, right? However, when a company gets larger, right? So 16 to 100 employees, let's say, now you start having multiple people on the marketing team. You may have multiple layers of marketing staff. So you've got a manager, and then you've got a coordinator, maybe you have a director or something like that. And so understanding and familiarizing yourself. And then also, we can get into it, but like, brands get really large, over 100 employees. This is when they start, delegating the marketing activities to outside parties, other advertising agencies, PR agencies. And so really understanding that honing in on the best person to send this message to is critical, because what happens when you receive an email that was obviously not meant for you? You just delete it, or you don't respond it, or maybe you forward it, but almost never, and so a big part of like increasing the probability of getting a response is spending a lot of time actually narrowing in on who's the best person to target.
Yeah, that's a great point. So back to AI for a second. I'm curious, are there any strategies or tools you recommend, like for somebody to use AI to help them maybe craft the pitch, maybe figure out who to reach out to, or anything like that?
Well, I'm building one, Brian. So I actually do. I have a tool that I have trained on all of my course material and all of my live streams and content and all that stuff too. So I've got my framework, and so the students in my course actually have access to a beta version of that right now. But I absolutely am like doing a lot of tinkering in this space right now, because I think there's a lot of opportunity.
Yeah. All right. And so let's say that we figured out, okay, I want to work with this brand. I've kind of identified that our audience works together. I've figured out like, this is the size of the company. This is the job title I'm going to go after. I'm going to try to pitch that person. Now we come to maybe like potential pricing and negotiation.
Okay.
Do you have any kind of like framework or formula that a creator can use to come up with a fair price? Because I think this is a place where a lot of creators kind of get stuck.
Yeah. Okay. So we skipped ahead, dude. We got to do one more thing before we jump into the negotiation. I really strongly implore that the next step after the pitch, if you hook the brand, is to get on a phone call, establish the rapport, research some questions in advance about the brand's market, their product roadmap, So you've got a list of 10 questions, let's say, and you get on a Zoom call and you treat it just like a fact-finding mission. You say, I want to learn more about their objectives. I want to learn more about, hey, have they worked with creators in the past? If they did it go well? If it didn't go so well, why didn't it go so well? Are they having supply chain issues? Like whatever, just like, whatever the industry specific questions are, because a call accomplishes a couple things. Number one, that establishing that initial rapport is so important, dude. They can put a face to the name. The majority of creators don't want to get on a phone call. They just want to know how much you're going to pay me, right? And so if you can be the one who is clearly invested in the outcome of a collaboration, I bet you could say, like, you if you held up two creators side by side, one of which you had a phone call with, even if that person is like charging twice as much, it just seems like it's probably going to go better with this person, and you're more willing to give them a shot, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I've experienced that so many times just in business as well. Like if I have the opportunity to speak with a potential customer or client or something like that, like the chances of that actually turning into a successful thing is just so many times higher. Yeah. So you don't even have to really like sell yourself on this call. It's all about just finding out the information, right?
Yeah, 100%. And the reason why I really recommend the call beforehand is because this also helps you with your pricing. Okay. And this is the real secret. It's that almost without fail, at the end of these calls, the brand will just be like, okay, so like, how much do you charge? You're like, give me a ballpark here, right? And so a lot of creators are terrified of kind of getting backed into this corner and spitting out like 1,000. They just like, spit it out. And then they like, cry later in the shower, not that I've ever done that. So the advice that I give is I've got this kind of verbatim script that I talk about in the book. You say, thank you. When they ask you this question, how much you charge, you say, hey, you know what? This call was so great. I actually need to give this a bit more thought. What I would like to do is go back and I'm going to put together a proposal for you. And usually what I do when I put together a proposal is I'm going to put together 3 to 4 different packages to give you a sense of how I could bring this partnership to life. Do you have a sense of what I should set those 3 to 4 tiers at from a budget feasibility perspective? This is very different than asking, what's your budget, Brian? Because if you say, what's your budget? They don't want to tell you. They're going to stonewall. If they do tell you the budget, what do you think your proposal, if they say 10K, what's your proposal going to be at? 10K. And you have to remember, when you're a creator, they're probably not just reaching out to you. They're reaching out to 10, 20, 50 other creators to kind of kick the tires on everyone. When I ran my business, when I ran this influencer marketing agency, our client would say, here's 100K. We want to work with 10 creators. Figure it out, right? Manage the campaign and so our job was to kind of Tetris the budget together because everyone charges differently, right? And so your job as a creator, your goal is to have some package that they can move forward with you at. Oh, we wanted to move forward with Justin at the 10K level, but something screwed up and like we only have 5K left. So, but he gave us a 5K package. Perfect. Let's move forward with him at that lower level. And so I talk a lot about this kind of Moneyball approach to sponsorships, where it's like, if you hit a single, if you hit a double, that's great. You don't always have to hit home runs every single deal. A lot of it is like aggregating these sponsorships into this larger income pool where you pool a lot of opportunities together. And so this is shocking, I know, to hear, but like 75% of the time when you ask brands the budget range, say, what are the 3 to 4 tiers, this type of thing, they'll tell you. It's crazy. They'll say 1, 2, 3K, or because they feel like they have an out now, right? They've got some wiggle room if they need to come later down on the budget gets cut or whatever. 25% of the time, though, they won't tell you. They'll say, we don't know. You tell us, we've never done this before, this type of thing. And so my advice in that scenario to creators is when you send your packages back, because you're still going to send packages, package 1 has to be your hell yeah number. Meaning that if they pick package 1, which is like the lowest amount, you say, all right, hell yeah, let's go. I'm excited. Let's do this. Not, oh man, I got to do this now. I was hoping they'd pick package 3. So you just never want to resent the partnership at the outset. And so again, the hell yeah number is different for every creator. And so, yes, I do have calculators. I've got formulas. I've got all that stuff to get a baseline. But at the end of the day, it's not about that. It's about what's your hell yeah number? Figure that out first.
Awesome. So I think there's something that is extremely powerful about the idea of packages, because that means you can offer something where if the brand comes back to you and says, actually, we can't pay that much, or we don't want to pay this much. Now you get to negotiate on what's inside it and not the price, right? So can you talk a little bit more about that and how creators can do that?
100%. I mean, this is one of the biggest mistake that creators make is the brand says, how much do you charge for one YouTube integration? And the creator goes, $1,500. They just spit back a number, right? And not only does having packages allow you to, like you said, negotiate on the contents of each package, but there's actually a more important strategy. So let's talk about let's say you've graduated and you are sending packages, right? The mistake that a lot of creators make even in that scenario is that the only variance between the packages is quantity. So they say package 1 is 1 YouTube video. Package 2 is 2 YouTube videos. Package 3 is 3 YouTube videos. And maybe the only incentive that a brand has to pick package 3 is a price concession. I'll give you 10% off, 15% off if you pick the top package or the longest package, whatever. That's really not that compelling to a brand. Like if they want to like see how it goes first. And so they don't want to sign onto a multi-year thing until they see how it goes. So you know what a better strategy is, Brian? Remember how we were talking about understanding what your objectives are at heights. You've got your own KPIs, your objectives, all that. When you're on that phone call with the brand, one of the key questions that you ask is, what is your goal? What would success look like to you? And there's 3 possible answers. I call it my ARC framework. A is an awareness campaign. We're trying to raise awareness about this feature, this seasonal campaign. We were available only in the UK. Now we're in the US, something big like that, right? R in the ARC framework is repurposing. So the reason they want to hire you is they want to take the content that you make and use it in other ways beyond you uploading it on your platform. Put it on their website, put it on their social media, use it for paid advertising. So something else, right? And then the C is conversions. So they're saying, hey, we want to drive sales. We want to drive leads. We want to drive software, trial signups, whatever. And so oftentimes when you ask brands their goal, they'll say a smattering of all those things. They'll say, oh yeah, sales and awareness, and we want to get the content too, and like all these things, right? And so this is where the game-changing strategy with the packages comes into play, which is that you're no longer going to vary it by quantity. You're going to vary it by the goals. So package 1 is the awareness goal. That's that. If you want awareness, let's go with package 1. That's going to be the YouTube videos. That's going to be the podcast integration. That's going to be the blah, 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 whatever. And then package 2, they told you that they also wanted to repurpose your content. Well, guess what? In package 2, there's no YouTube videos. There's no podcast insertions. All there is in package 2 is 5 30-second videos that you create where you vary the hook, you vary the call to action, and great. Take those videos, put them in the Meta black box ad algorithm, see which one performs best. Package 3 is the conversion package. That's where you're going to do the newsletter blasts. That's where you're going to drive, do a post on your YouTube community tab. I don't know, to drive, webinar registrations, whatever. And guess what package 4 is? That's where you get everything. And so all of a sudden, the only way for the brand to accomplish all their objectives is to pick the top package.
Yeah, that's great. So what if the brand then comes back to you and says like, okay, like we definitely want to focus on this. Like the brand realizes more of what they're actually trying to focus on, but then they still want to negotiate and somehow get a lower price. Mm-hmm. Like what are the things that you would suggest a creator to be able to adjust within a package for that brand?
So first of all, don't just come down on price and concede nothing and the brand concedes nothing, right? Just be like, they say, oh, well, we want to go with package 2, but we only have $1,000 and it's $2,000. You're like, okay, I can do it. Right. That's the worst thing because now you have set a new price precedent. You've eroded your pricing power. And now the brand knows in the future, they can always come try to negotiate you down on price and they have to give up nothing in return. So don't do that. Don't ever do that. The other thing too, is don't negotiate against yourself. A lot of creators, I saw this when I ran the agency, where we would come and we would reach out to them about an opportunity and they would quote us the figure. And then we'd be like, okay, great. We'll get back to you once we hear back, we're going to talk to the client. And then 3 days later, they'd be like, actually, I can do it for 500 because they were like, in the absence of an update, they thought that they scared the brand off. And it's just like, no, Don't do that. Don't negotiate against yourself. So don't do that. But I think the biggest thing is understanding that if the brand has less money, then it's going to require to get the full, contents of that package. You have to take stuff out. You have to say, okay, well, we can do package 2, but we're going to have to remove, the social posts, or we're going to have to remove the YouTube integration. And if the brand comes back and says, well, we have to have the YouTube integration. Okay, well, you're going to have to say, okay, well, something's got to give here. Maybe we reduce the exclusivity from 90 days to 30 days, or maybe we reduce the paid usage term from 6 months to 30 days, or remove it entirely. So there's a lot of various levers that you can pull. So just the brand has to understand that they also have to give up some things in return.
Yeah. Let's say that somebody has gotten to the point of at least understanding this. They're not panicking and just saying, oh, I'll just lower my price. So they understand they can change something in their package if they're going to bring down the price. Is there any big mistakes that you see people make in terms of that, where they change something that would really not be worth it to them, or is really worth so much more to the brand that they're not realizing that they're actually kind of giving away?
I think that if you do your job of asking about the goals at the outset, that'll be a safeguard to ensure that you really know what's important to them. Because if you don't ask them, you may not have known that they really, really value getting the raw assets to use it for repurposing. And you could just be throwing that in, be like, oh yeah, sure. Every brand, they get the raw assets, and I'll just give you a folder with 500 images and 6 hours of raw content. Oh, you want to repurpose it? Sure, here it is. Without realizing this is the primary goal of why they're hiring you. And so I think that's really the big risk, is not ascertaining what's important to the brand. And just I see this a lot actually, where creators have a media kit and they already have boilerplate packages that they've created. Package 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This one includes the blog post syndication. This one includes the social posts. This one includes whatever. And it's just pick one, right? And they're just throwing stuff in. And it's just well, hold on a second here. What if the brand doesn't care at all about those things that you're doing? So you're creating more work for yourself. They don't care about it. Or they're seeing all these packages that you're presenting to them, and they're like, we actually don't want any of this stuff. This is not interesting to us. The example that I give is imagine that you went to the doctor and you had an ailment, and you sit in the waiting room, and the doctor comes in, and you open your mouth to tell them about your symptoms, and they're like, shh, hold on a second here. And they just write down a prescription, they hand it to you, and they walk out. They're like, it's hold on a second here. You didn't even ask me what what my problems are, what my symptoms are. That's really what you're doing as a creator when you're trying to offer brands these kind of boilerplate stuff.
Yeah. Or here's a package of prescriptions. Which one do you want?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, pick one. You want Prozac? You want some? You want a COVID shot? What do you want? Pick one.
Yeah. So how can creators, let's say they stop hearing from the brand, how do they decide to follow up? Should you follow up? How do you do that without feeling like you're being pushy or turning into some kind of salesperson you don't want to be?
Let me answer this question by sharing a story. Emma, I have a coaching client. Her name is Emma. Emma cruises. So she's one of the largest cruising YouTubers out there. She shared a win in our community recently that one of her most recent deals that she inked, she had to follow up with the brand contact 4 times without hearing back. 4 times before they finally responded and said, oh, thank you so much. It's been crazy, Emma, but this is perfect timing because we've got a campaign. This is great. Let's collaborate on this. So number 1, yes, you should be following up. Number 2, could you set that as a goal for yourself to have the tenacity to follow up with the brand 4 times without hearing back, and understanding that the absence of a response is not, we hate you. It's either we're busy, we're out of office, we're sick, we're on vacation, or I don't have an update for you yet because I haven't talked to my boss yet to know if we can do this thing. So there's all these variety of, so short of them saying, stop contacting us, you absolutely have to be following up. But you know what you don't do when you follow up, Brian? You don't say, just wanted to bring this to the top of your inbox, just circling back after the holidays. Don't do that. That's the world's most annoying series of words. What you have to do, and what I teach, is you have to be providing value in every follow-up. So maybe that's, hey, I saw this article on Digiday or on Adweek about how this other brand in a similar category to you is killing it with short form content or something. Thought your team might find this interesting. That's valuable.
I mean, I could tell you, I wish people did that when they reached out to us, because we just get this stuff and just close it. Yeah, if we could see like, wow, these creators are really invested in understanding everything. It's you want to respond to them at the very least to say, oh, we're not ready just yet, but like we'll come back to you soon on this.
Right. And it's like, I guess, again, I like talking in analogies because I feel like it helps hammer home the point. It's like, you cannot make withdrawals from an empty bank account or an empty relationship. If you're constantly asking, do you have anything for me now? Do you have anything for me now? Do you have any update for me now? Versus, okay, I'm just going to keep making deposits in the relationship. Here's an article. Hey, do you want to get on a Zoom call, like a lunch and learn call with your marketing team with me, and I can share what I'm seeing succeeding on short form platforms right now. Let's spend 30 minutes doing that next week. Or it's just these various examples of giving. It's just, I feel like it just goes back to the jab right hook Gary Vee book from many years ago. It's just like, how can you provide value when you're following up? It's just going to make it so much easier to be top of mind when you are ready to run that campaign as a brand.
Yeah. All right. So let's say like we're now ready to like decide if we're going to actually make this deal, and the brand's going to decide if they're going to make this deal with us. What happens after everyone agrees on price and decides to move forward?
Well, don't go rogue and create the content just because the brand said, we trust you. Like, make it organic and authentic, and you do your thing. Be a creator. That's the magic words that every creator wants to hear. But what happens is that you say, okay, great. You go and you make the content, and then you send the draft to the brand for review, and the brand is like, this isn't what we had in mind at all. Can you reshoot this? This is actually terrible. Like, we wanted you to do this, this, and this, not that. And the creator's like, what the heck here? I thought you said I had creative freedom. Like, and then now all of a sudden you're in this super contentious situation with the brand where you're like demanding more money and there's animosity, and that sucks. Right. And so, I talk in my book, Sponsor Magnet, the whole thing goes through my 8-step sponsorship wheel. And this is actually step 4, which is the concept. So even if the brand is not asking you for one, you have to give them one. You have to say, here's what I'm planning on doing. Could be 2 sentences. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. Give me some feedback on this. Is that what you had in mind? You want that as a creator. You want to give the brand the opportunity to say, hold on a second here. Let's slow down here. We actually need to think about this a bit more, because no, that's not what we want. That's way better than you doing the whole thing, filming it, editing it, getting excited about posting it, and then all of a sudden now you're you gotta redo everything. So I think this is a really, really important juncture here, is just having safeguards built into your process to work smarter and not harder.
Yeah, I think if you're a creator watching or listening to this and you are someone like a designer or have a service business like this is probably kind of obvious to you, and you've probably already gone through a lot of pain and suffering of not doing it the maybe right way. But if you're someone who's like, you're just a content creator and this is all new to you, yeah, you can really save yourself a lot of trouble, and also I think just end up having a better relationship with the brand overall, instead of having this constant tension back and forth of like, oh, now you've got to adjust this, and now you're both feeling bad about the whole thing, or it's too difficult, all that.
Dude, so many creators have never had a real job, Brian. This has been my experience, is that they started making content in school, it popped off, and wow, I'm able to make some livelihood. I'm going to try this creator thing before I have to like go get a 9-to-5 or whatever. And so they really don't have much experience with what it's like interacting in a professional setting, email, etiquette, what's kind of the expectations of like a business relationship when you sign on the dotted line for a contract to collaborate with someone. And I don't fault anyone for this lack of experience. Heck, it's why I wrote the book, is like to try to give people an understanding of like how you can go into these relationships and prepare yourself. And dude, like, so much of like what I talk about. In fact, like I'm really excited that we're talking about this execution phase right now, because this is like the least sexy stuff. Oh, the concept and like the production and like the feedback that you get from the brand, and how do you like work with them in a way that's like additive to the relationship. This is stuff it's like the pitching and the negotiating. That's like the sexy stuff, like, oh, making more money and signing the contracts and all that. But like, honestly, dude, it's been my experience that like, it's this stuff during the execution phase. That's when the brand decides whether they're going to hire you again or not. If you're like, not responsive, if you're not professional, if you're a divo or a diva, if it's just like pulling teeth to get every single detail from the project with you, they're just going to be like, we're never hiring this person again. This was awful. Versus,
I mean, maybe unless the end result is like so out of the brand's initial expectations,
right?
Like, yeah, it's just pretty much, all right, this part of our life is over. We're not working with this person again.
Yeah, 100%. And even if the results were amazing, sometimes it might have been so awful working with them that they're just like, it's not worth it. The juice is not worth the squeeze. Yeah. that was chaos. I definitely experienced a lot of that. And you know what the interesting thing, Brian, is that when I ran the agency, there would be these campaigns where there were quick turnarounds, where the client was like, this has to go live by like April 1st or whatever. And we had like 10 days or something. Immediately, we had this short list of people where we were like, let's go see if they're available for this. Because the last time we worked with them, they turned it around super fast. It was like perfect. We didn't have very many revisions on it. And even though they're going to charge like twice as much, we have no choice. We have to get this done by April 1st. And so what I hope this triggers in people who are listening or watching this is that there's a lot of like intangibles that brands value beyond your audience size. And in fact, like if you just even look at my wife and I's business, dude, like we're at candidly, the lowest, the nadir of our influence over the last 15 years than we have ever been. You know, when we were like, you know, because we were family vloggers, like, you know, we were getting at one point like hundreds of thousands of views per video, like when we were having our babies and the pregnancy journey and all that, because people are really excited about that process. And so we're at the lowest we've ever been, and yet we're making the most amount of money that we've ever made every year. Because when brands hire me and my wife, they know what product they are buying. It's timeliness. It's professionalism. We're going to hit every talking point. We're going to hit every deadline. When they come back to us with edits, we're not going to give them a bunch of flack. We'll be like, oh yeah, sure, no problem. Like that voiceover change will take 2 seconds, you know? But most creators are not like that, dude. They get so mad. They're so difficult. They cross their arms and say, you're violating my creative, genius. And it's just like a nightmare. And so we understand the product that we're selling. And I think that's a really critical insight.
Yeah, I think that's super important. So how about contracts? How does that work? Do you have the contract on the creator side, or do you expect the brand to give you the contract? And I guess we'll get into that first, but then I also want to know like what to look out for.
Yeah. So we absolutely skipped that step, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that is step 3, is the contract. And the larger a brand gets, the more likely it is that they have a contract for you, like that's been kind of blessed by their legal team, and they say, hey, here's the one. You have to use our contract, sign this type of thing. But a lot of times, especially if you're working with smaller brands, they may have never worked with creators. And so they actually first of all, they may just say, hey, that's okay. Let's just use this email thread as proof of the agreement, or this DM exchange or something. And it may be, in good, all good intents and everything. But absolutely can't do that. So you have to have your own, contract template as a creator, that, you can be, able to send to a brand. And so, what we did, and this is what I recommend to all creators, is that we went out there, we hired a lawyer for an hour or two, and we said, create a boilerplate contract template for us, where the first, 6 pages of this are all the boilerplate, stuff that protects us. And then the last page, which is like the appendix, is where we'll fill it out on a deal by deal basis, where it's the deliverables, it's the usage rights, it's the exclusivity, it's all like the deal points, basically. And that is a good investment for you as a creator. And if you don't want to do that, there's lots of templates out there that you can probably find on the internet. That's fine to buy them. But again, look, If you had to start any other business, let's say you're starting a ice cream shop, right? There's lots of costs that you incur before you can sell a single ice cream cone, right? Equipment, insurance, rent, labor, ingredients, like before you could sell a single ice cream cone. And so what are your costs as a creator? A computer, software, a camera, and maybe hiring a lawyer for an hour or two to make a contract template for you. That's a worthwhile investment.
Yeah. I mean, as a creator, you want to be creating. You don't want to be sitting there dealing with a lawsuit or just problem with some customer that you had, or not getting your money, or them using your likeness in some way you didn't agree to. You want to be able to focus on just creating. What would you say about creators who are working with multiple brands, as far as like, okay, I know my audience, so I want to work with brands in this category, but maybe some of these brands are actually competitors to each other. How do you handle that as a creator?
So a lot of brands that you do work with will actually ask you to be exclusive to them in a certain category for a certain duration. So they may say, hey, let's say you're working with Shopify. You can't, work with any other website builders or e-commerce, platforms or whatever for 60 days, 90 days, whatever the term is. Depends on how large the partnership. Some brands, especially if it's like more of like kind of an ambassadorship where it's like an ongoing thing, they may be a multi-year commit, exclusivity that they ask you to agree to. And so number one, you absolutely have to be pricing that into your deals, this opportunity costs essentially of not working with the brand's competitors. First of all, it's a reasonable thing for a brand to ask for a certain level of exclusivity that, it's just not, they don't want to see you, partner with them and then 2 days later, turn around and do a sponsored post for their competitor. Like, first of all, like that's not going to be a good look for you with your audience either. So there should
hey
be
guys,
some sort of
what
like,
I told you last week? Just kidding.
Yeah, not a good look. And so you should have some sort of like built-in exclusivity that you're employing for yourself in your business for your own integrity. But it is a very real thing though, that a lot of brands will ask for very vague or amorphous exclusivity. So I could share a quick example here where, my wife and I have done a lot of consumer brand partnerships over our career. And we had a brand reach out where they sold cheese. Okay. Just, basically a cheese brand. And, the exclusivity category that they wanted, it was for like 6 months or something, was snacks. And we were like, that feels pretty broad. Like, I don't think snacks is like, that's too broad. And so, we came back to them and said, we're okay with exclusivity, but can we confine the category to something like snacking cheeses? So like string cheese and things like that. And they were like, sure. They didn't even push back. They were like, yeah, sure. And what do you know? 2 months later, another brand in a snack category came to us with a partnership. So had we not even understood this or kind of counter offer to the brand with this piece of it, we would have lost that deal. It was a 5-figure deal, right? And so like this stuff matters. It really matters that you understand the implications of what you're agreeing to.
Yeah, because I think on the brand side, it's more common that their contracts will be maybe stricter than they need to be, just to be absolutely in their favor. They're not maybe necessarily trying to like take advantage of you or something, but it just makes sense. Like, let's just guarantee that this is in our favor. But then on the creator side, like it's possible even that the other snacking brand saw that first ad and you're like, hey, he's got an ad for this. Like they were not competitors in some way, but they saw it and they were like, this just feels like it would work well for us too. And so actually maybe having the sponsorship with one thing can help like adjacent companies feel like you're a good creator to sponsor.
Yeah. I mean, I think also it's like shows you have a track record. Like, well, if this brand, if they're doing sponsorships, like I guess they're worthy. They must have been a good partner. And that also could, give brands kind of other brands a warm and fuzzy feeling like this is someone worth sponsoring.
Yeah. So let's say though, what if things don't go well? What if you can't come to an agreement on price? Like the brand is just like really trying to lowball you to something that you just know you're worth more than that. or maybe there's some problem with the contract or something like that. Like, when do you decide to back out of the deal?
I think that it really helps if you know your hell yeah number, like we talked about earlier. Because if you really understand your worth and your value, and you know that, I really don't want to be, working for less than X thousand dollars. It's okay to say no. It's okay to walk away, but critically maintaining the relationship, not saying this is an insulting number. Like, I am doing deals for 5 times this much. Like, how dare you? Like, you would be shocked at the types of things that creators say to brands, dude. Because I've seen it. Not that we were ever like giving lowball offers to creators when I ran the agency, but like I've coached hundreds of creators, and they've forwarded me their email exchanges to brands. So I know what people are saying to brands. And one thing that has been so true in my wife and I's career, doing over 500 deals, is that very often we would say no to a brand for whatever the scope of work is that they were asking for, very respectfully. We couldn't come to terms, and then they would come back to us 6 months later. They would be like, "Hey, we got a better budget this time. We've been trying to find a way to work with you. Let's collaborate." And so if you can ensure that you're maintaining that kind of amicable a disposition when you're interacting with these brands, it can absolutely, and you're continuing to nurture the relationship, even if you say no, right? You're following up. Even if you didn't do that deal, then you're sending that article from Digiday, you're offering other value, right? You're continuing to stay top of mind from them. And then they may find a deal that actually is in more of your budget feasibility wheelhouse down the line. So, walking away is a real thing that you have to do sometimes to maintain your pricing power. And I understand that, like, this is a really hard thing to do. It's easy for me to say this, but especially when you feel like there's this endless line of creators behind you willing to accept it for free stuff or for a lower rate. And so a lot of this comes down to a mindset thing and understanding what it is that you have to bring to the table that is different than the endless line of creators willing to accept the free thing. One thing, for example, that you're different, Brian, is helping the brand understand that, when you pay me, you have more control. Let's be real. You're afforded more control over the asset that I ultimately generate. I understand that. I understand because you're paying me, that affords you the right to feedback on the concept that I'm going to provide to you, feedback on the draft content. If you're just gifting creators stuff, you're almost never seeing like the asset that they ultimately post. Maybe the creator, you're horrified because they demonstrated it improperly. They said the name of your brand wrong, all these sort of things. So when there's compensation involved, especially large compensation, you are able to have more creative insight into, or creative like feedback into how that asset ultimately gets created, especially if you want to repurpose that asset. So again, it's just like understanding these words, being able to have this conversation with the brand, to educate them. Dude, I think this is really the insight here, is that a lot of creators think that brands have everything figured out. They must, right? They've got a marketing team. They're the experts. They're the brand. A lot of brands have no idea what they're doing, dude. They've never worked with creators. Maybe they have, but it didn't go well. They're fearful about the process. If you can come in, you can put your hand on their shoulder and say, look, I've done this a bunch of times. Here's what a good partnership looks like because I've done it a bunch of times. Let me provide some suggestions about how you can optimize your influencer strategy. Oh my God, brands will be so thankful for that.
Yeah. Yeah. And to the point that you made before of like a time when maybe you feel you're not able to work with the brand just yet. Another reason why you want to keep that relationship open is because maybe the person you're interacting with, they're not the person actually deciding the budgets or how any of this works. And if it's the brand's first time really trying this, it might just be an exercise where the brand comes back and realizes we probably have to budget more for all of this. And then the marketing team member or whoever's going to reach out to all the creators now has a better budget and can then come back to you and say, hey, how about now? And then maybe it ends up being like a perfect client for you. Who knows?
Dude, I have a bunch of these, what I call public coaching calls on my YouTube channel where I've basically coached a creator live and then uploaded the video on YouTube. And so it's been pretty sweet to have all those. And there's this one video that I did with a creator named Thomas. I think the video is called Why Traditional Brands Are Not Sponsoring You, like traditional brands. Because this is a big struggle for a lot of creators where maybe they have a really specific niche. So Thomas in particular was in the scuba diving industry. And that's what his channel is focused on. And so he would be talking with these scuba gear companies, and they'd be like, well, why are you asking for money? Like, all these other scuba divers are happy to get the, scuba diving equipment is expensive. So like, why are you asking for money? Like, this should be enough. Or, they would spend $11,000 advertising in this like industry trade magazine. And the way he started these conversations was like, that's stupid. Why are you doing that? Like, that's not a good use of your money. You should work with creators. You should advertise on social media. This is like the wave of the future. And so what he was doing in essence, and he jokes about this now with me, but it's like, he's basically saying, hey, you're an idiot. Why are you doing that? And that the person that he was speaking with might have been the person who was responsible for spending that money. And so I think we have this habit as a creator of just like trying to kind of condescending unintentionally when we're talking with the brand. And so a big part of this is just helping them understand like, hey, like you don't have to change anything about what you're currently doing. How about we augment your current strategy with this other thing over here to accelerate it?
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I want to go more into the mindset side of things. Let's say that you're going through the video and you say, all right, Justin, everything you said here is great. I get it. I got to really look at this as like a professional thing and as a business, but it just feels kind of overwhelming to me. Like, I don't even know if I should do sponsorships at all. What would you say to somebody like that?
So there's this philosophy that I have, I'm actually writing a speech about this right now. I call it the collaboration paradox, where when you're a creator, it's very common to be comfortable asking for feedback on your craft, on your art, on your creativity. You say, hey, what do you think of this thumbnail, friend, in this Discord? Or you text your group text, of all your creator friends on there and be like, hey, is there any way I can make this 30-second, intro of this video better, improve retention? Or, hey, can you read this draft of my book or this draft of this blog post or newsletter? What do you think of it? How can I improve it? That's like a very normal thing to collaborate on our creativity. But somehow, when we think about making money, when we think about how we can have a sustainable business, somehow we feel like we have to figure this out alone. I can't talk about money. I can't ask people. And especially the idea of collaborating with an outside entity, a brand, a company, to help us bring our creative vision to life. Somehow we feel like, well, I can't do that. I don't want to do that. And so my suggestion for you listening, if you're still on the fence thinking like, I don't really know if I want to do this, my suggestion would be, what would it look like to take a collaborative approach to your creativity? When it comes to monetizing, where you say, hey, I take that same energy where I'm asking for feedback and collaborating with others to make my work better. What if I collaborated with people to actually bring this to life where it's financially sustainable? And so this is my suggestion for you, is like, maybe it's a mindset shift there where it's like, wow, that actually could be pretty cool. There's this web series I've always wanted to make, but I just don't know how I'd be able to do that financially. What if I could find a strategic partner, a strategic company or brand where we could bring this to life together, and it would satisfy both of our goals. My goal is for this thing to exist in the universe, and the brand's goal is to move the needle on some business outcome. What would that look like?
Yeah, that's a great way to think about it. How about somebody who is like worried about feeling salesy with everything involved in this?
So a big reason that I think there's the ick factor that creators have with sponsorships is because they're worried about being flamed in the comments, or people, oh, you're selling out, like you're just trying to line your pockets, this type of thing. What I find happens most of the time is that this happens when creators accept sponsorships without truly understanding the psychographics of their audience, where the only criteria that the creator has to select a sponsor is whether they like it or not. Oh yeah, I've used this product or whatever, right? there's a step that's missing from that process, which is we actually need to learn about what's going on in our audience's lives. What's keeping them up at night? What problems do they have? What types of jobs do they have? Are they married? Do they have kids? What types of brands and products and services are they using and loving right now or interested in? Actually surveying them on our YouTube community tab, on our Instagram stories, send out a freaking Google form or type form on my newsletter. Learn about the psychographics. It's not enough to just know about the demographics. Yeah, that's helpful. But the psychographics, if I let's say that I have a business where I serve SMBs, right? Small, medium-sized businesses. And you do a survey and 35%, 40% of respondents you discover have a brick and mortar shop. Wow. You realize, I thought everyone in my audience was internet businesses. I didn't realize that I had a huge chunk of my audience was SMBs. Well, or brick and mortar shops. You know what I should probably do? I should probably go out there and pitch Square. Or some company that has a point of sale solution, or a solution that helps you reconcile inventory in store and your e-commerce shop at the point of sale. The people in my audience told me they're having issues with this. I got it on the survey. So now when you reach out to the brand, it's a way to better pitch, right? It's not like, oh, I love you, I've used your tool for 5 years. It's, hey, I got a bunch of people in my audience actively having an issue with this. Let's collaborate here. So not only that, but also when you come out with the sponsorship, your audience is going to be like, hallelujah, thank you. This is exactly what we were having issues with. So this is the step. This is the step that's missing from a lot of sponsorships. And so you're no longer worried about it being icky or salesy when you have conviction that you're solving your audience's problems.
Yeah. And I could tell you from the brand perspective, I just wish people would reach out like that. And like if somebody reached out to me like that and said, hey, like my audience, they're really struggling creating courses and communities and like they need to do this. And like, it's like, oh, great. Okay. How can we work together? And so it just really will increase your chances as a creator of actually landing that brand partnership.
Can I say bookend that real quick? The last thing you said.
Yeah.
Okay. So everyone watching or listening this is straight from Brian's mouth. He runs a company. I can't tell you how many brands I've spoken with, people like you, who I've said this to them and they're like, oh, I just wish a creator would say that to me. So this is your ticket here. Do the research, reach out, have something in mind, do the surveys of your audience. It's just such a more compelling pitch.
So on the opposite side of this, I've actually been struggling recently in trying to figure out what is the right way for me as a brand to approach working with creators. And my, I guess, worry in my mindset has been that I see some brands out there and I just feel like, okay, well, like this creator's just talking about them because they're sponsored and everyone's going to just feel, oh, this brand is just sponsoring everybody. So that's why people are talking about it, rather than feeling like really a genuine connection with the brand or that brand's actual product is good. And so on the perspective of my brand, like I guess some backstory is like we're a bootstrap company. We're not funded by all these investors. So we don't have this budget of millions of dollars where we just have to spend it on marketing. We have to be very deliberate in what we do. But I definitely don't want to be the brand where it's just like, oh, everybody's just using Heights because everyone just is paid to talk about that or whatever.
Right.
And I wish that the way that somebody viewed, like if we sponsor the creator was like almost flipped, where it's like, oh wow, I'm so happy for that creator that they got sponsored by Heights or something. And like kind of like the idea of like if you were a musician and you got signed by a record label, it's like, oh cool, they're signed now, and like it's a moment where the audience is actually happy for them rather than feeling like, oh, they're just getting paid by this company. So I guess on like the brand side, how would you suggest that we try to work with creators, and like what do we offer them? How does the partnership actually work to not just be about money, I guess?
I have a bunch of different ideas for you. Well, the first one is a tactical thing. I think that priority number one is setting up some social listening software to see who's already talking about you authentically, already out there. Are there's people out there being super loud about how much they love Heights on X or LinkedIn or something, like boom, nail a deal with them. That's great. That's the half the battle is like someone already being familiar with the brand and being a vocal advocate. Bonus points if they're influential as well. That's number one. Second thing is that the first place I would turn if I was you would be my customers or my affiliates, because those are the people who are already authentic fans. They probably, at the very least, their customers have seen, have a bit of awareness probably about your platform if they're logging into it, unless it's white labeled or whatever. But like there's some level of awareness probably that the customers have around your product. So that to me would be kind of a no-brainer. The other thing too, I think, is when you are reaching out to a creator is understanding what is important to them in their world right now. Because a lot of brands, when I used to run the agency, we would talk about this, is like creators just won't respond. Like we're like, messaging them and they're not responding, or they don't seem interested or whatever. And then I go and I look up the creator's, business, and they're doing 100K a month on their course. And so, the brands over here being like, I don't know why they won't like work with us for $1,000 on like an Instagram post or something. And I'm like, you got to understand, like, what is the holistic nature of this creator's income portfolio, and try to design an offer that is exciting to them. So maybe there is a component of a collaboration that you could do with the creator where, if it makes sense, what would it look like to promote the creator's course to the Heights customer base, or do some sort of co-branded webinar. Maybe there's this really handsome guy named Justin who has a book that he wants to spread the word about. You say, hey, Justin, let's do a webinar, a co-webinar, or I'm going to email our, 30,000 course creators, customers about your book. What would that look like? If you came to me with that pitch, I'd be like, dude, let's talk. Like, this is sick. Right. And so what you have to understand as a brand is like, yeah, this is not like it's not super scalable, right? Because it's not that you're going to be able to copy and paste and do a mail merge and send this pitch out to, 10,000 creators, but your success rate in the effectiveness of the collaboration is going to skyrocket because it's a mutually beneficial thing now. It's not just about the creator getting money. It's about you understanding what's important to them at this point in their life, at this point in their business. But maybe you only need 5 or 10 of those types of partnerships to really move the needle. And so I think that if I were you, if I was a bootstrap company and I was, really, needing to be strategic about how we're spending our marketing capital, that would be the exact playbook.
Well, I'm really glad to hear that, because that's kind of in line with what we've been thinking of. Like, some of these people are not just interested in money. So how can we find out like what's going to be important to this person now? And like, is there a way that we can somehow help them with that? Mm-hmm. So that being the step. And then also on the affiliate side, I will admit that I had the completely wrong approach to that in the beginning, that I think we were just like, oh, affiliates. So affiliates just mean that people are going to go and talk about our product. And like some of them, maybe they're full-time affiliates, like they know what to do. First of all, they don't know what to do. You really have to educate them and be involved in it, even if they are like a full-time affiliate. And that if you really want to be successful with it, the way we're thinking now is like, we have to treat these people as like an extension of our team, of like an extra sales team, and like really be a lot more involved and connected with them. And so I think the same goes for like sponsorships and like working with creators, and like to the points that we've talked about before. If you're on the creator side and you really want to start working with brands, connecting with them like this and like everything that we've talked about, it'll just make it so much easier for the brand to want to work with you. And I think it'll make it more successful for both of you as well.
Totally.
All right, I want to get into some practical advice now. So a couple quick questions, but I think important ones. If you could give creators one piece of advice for landing sponsorships, what would that be?
Be nice, be polite. It's kind of one and the same. You would be shocked at how rude some creators and influencers can be to brands that are reaching out. If they, oh, you won't pay me my rate? Screw off. Like I only get out of bed for blah, blah, blah. Like the types of things I've seen, dude, I guess it's like a horror story, man. But this is like, honestly, like the person on the other end of this email is a human being. And if you can, these human beings want to enjoy their day-to-day life. And so if you can be pleasant, if you can be nice, it goes a long, long way.
What would you say a beginner who wants to get involved in this can take the first step towards finding sponsors today?
Ask your audience. ask your audience this survey that I was telling you about and ask them the brands and products and services that they're using and loving right now or are interested in. That becomes the short list of the brands for you to reach out to.
And what trends do you predict are going to kind of shape the future of influencer sponsorships in the next 3 to 5 years?
I do think that live commerce, I mean, they've been saying for years that it's going to come. It's been hugely popular in Asia for, a number of years. Amazon Live has tried it. TikTok Shop has seemed to have cracked the formula there. TBD what the long-term longevity of this platforms like that are going to be. But I really do think there is something here. And especially because not every creator is good in a live environment like that. It's a special skill to be able to be dynamic on camera in a live environment where you're not editing stuff, but you're talking about products and things like that. My wife and I did Amazon Live for about 3 years. Every single week we would do these live streams, and we were not good at it in the beginning. It was hard to juggle the stream and the technology and talking about the products, and we just got better at it. And over time, over just many repetitions, and I think that skill of being able to, be kind of fluid on camera, that is a skill that you'll be able to take with you into lots of different things, whether it's to doing in-person hosting, whether it's to help brands, do kind of just more on camera stuff. I do think that there's a lot that's going to happen. Maybe there's going to be a brand new platform we don't know about, and that pops up in a year. In fact, I think I saw one called Favorited that is blowing up on the App Store, in the last couple months. So there's all sorts of, I think, opportunities for creators to hone not just their tactical skills, but just kind of try to have your eye on where the puck is going instead of where it's at.
Yeah, it's great advice. And where can our audience find out more about you and your book?
Yeah, man. Well, first of all, thank you so much again for having me on. I feel proud to be a repeat guest now, which is sweet. So you can learn more about the book at sponsormagnet.com. It has a very juicy subtitle. It's How to Attract, Price, and Execute Your Dream Brand Partnerships. And I've got, it's honestly chock full. I mean, if anything that we talked about today kind of tingled your brain, it's like a small sliver of what I actually cover in the book. And in fact, if you do get excited about a lot of the templates and scripts and things like that, when you do pick up a copy of the book, I have a huge amount of bonuses in there. I have my sponsorship tracker template that I built in Notion that you get for free. I've got 15 different scripts that you can use to, kind of respond to brands when they're get different scenarios. I've got, any number of checklists and all that stuff too. So sponsormagnet.com.
Awesome. And I think you mentioned to me before when we talked that you have this goal of trying to help how many people or how many either people or sponsorship revenue?
Yeah, it's helping creators big and small land 1 million sponsorships by 2032.
Yeah. So if you are watching this or listening to this and this helps you get a sponsorship, definitely reach out to Justin.
Please let me know. Thanks, Brian.
All right. Thanks so much, Justin.